The storm had been raging for hours when the rancher saw her. At first, he thought it was an animal crawling out of the mesquite shadows, but as the lightning flashed across the desert, the shape moved like a person, slow, weak, and trembling. He rode closer, the rain slicing through the air like knives, and what he found made his breath stop. A woman, her dress torn and soaked in mud, lay crumpled beside the trail. Her skin was pale, her lips bluish, and she was clutching a piece of bloodied cloth pressed tight against her shoulder. "Ma'am," he called out, sliding from his horse. She didn't answer, only whimpered when he touched her arm. The storm roared above them, thunder shaking the ground. Without another thought, he scooped her up, lifting her small frame against his chest and carrying her to his horse. The mare protested, frightened by the lightning, but he held on, mounting with the woman held firmly in front of him. They rode hard through the night until the faint outline of his ranch appeared through the curtain of rain. By the time he got her inside, she was half conscious. The fire in the hearth was weak, barely alive, but he stoked it until flames licked high again. Gently, he laid her on his cot, dripping water across the floor. Her lips moved, whispering something he couldn't quite hear. He leaned closer, catching fragments of her words, "Please, don't, take it off." Her voice was frail, trembling. He looked down at the blood-soaked cloth she was clutching to her shoulder and felt a chill crawl up his spine. "You're hurt," he said softly. "You'll die if I don't." Her eyes fluttered open, dark, wide, and terrified. "Please," she whispered again, gripping his wrist weakly, "don't take the cloth off." He hesitated, the firelight dancing across her face. She wasn't a settler. Her skin was darker, her hair braided in a way he'd only seen among the tribes farther south. He could see the markings of travel, dust, torn leather straps, broken beads around her neck. Everything about her said she didn't belong here, and yet, something about her presence felt like fate itself had delivered her to his doorstep. He poured warm water into a basin, his hands trembling. He wasn't a doctor, but he'd patched up more than a few bullet holes and knife cuts in his time. He kneeled beside her, the sound of the storm muffled against the cabin walls. The cloth she held was soaked through, deep red seeping into her sleeve, the color too dark to ignore. He could smell the iron of the blood. "I can't just let you bleed," he murmured, his voice rough, almost pleading for her to understand. Her eyes locked on his, full of fear and something deeper, something like sorrow. "You don't know what you'll find," she said weakly. "Please, don't take it off." But he couldn't listen, his conscience wouldn't let him. Gently, he pried her fingers loose and pulled back the edge of the cloth. The moment he did, she let out a soft cry, and he froze. For a second, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The wound beneath wasn't what he expected. There was a mark, a strange blackened brand burned into her skin, surrounded by bruises and cuts. It wasn't a bullet wound. It was deliberate, a symbol carved and seared deep. The rancher's hand shook as he leaned closer. He recognized it. He had seen that symbol once before, years ago, during a border skirmish. It was the mark of a raider clan, one that had wiped out entire settlements across the desert. A brand that said property. He stumbled back, heart pounding. "Who did this to you?" Her breathing came fast now, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. "If you know that mark," she whispered, "then you know why they'll come for me. And now, they'll come for you too." The room seemed to grow colder. Outside, the wind howled against the wooden shutters. He looked down at her again, her body shivering from fever, her eyes heavy with pain and exhaustion. He reached for a clean bandage, wrapping her shoulder as gently as he could, covering the mark once more. "Whoever did this," he said quietly, "they won't find you here." She gave a faint, broken smile. "You don't understand," she murmured, her voice fading. "They always find what's theirs." Before he could reply, her eyes closed and she drifted into unconsciousness. He sat there for a long time, watching the fire crackle, the storm still raging outside. His mind replayed her words over and over, "Don't take the cloth off." He didn't know it yet, but by pulling that cloth away, he had crossed a line that would change his life forever. The desert had brought him a stranger, but the mark she carried would soon bring an army. And as he sat there, listening to the thunder echo across the plains, the rancher realized something deep in his bones, that fate, cruel as it was, had just found him too. By morning, the storm had broken, leaving the world outside washed and silent. The rancher stepped out onto the porch, boots crunching against the wet boards, the horizon still shrouded in mist. The air smelled of pine and smoke. His eyes scanned the empty plains, uneasy, half expecting to see riders cutting through the fog. But there was nothing, only the whisper of wind moving across the land. He went back inside. The woman still slept, pale but breathing steadily. He'd cleaned her wound, changed the bandage, and given her a sip of water before dawn. She had muttered something in her sleep, words he couldn't make out, a language older than the desert itself. He set down his hat and sat near the fire, rubbing his temples. All night, his mind had circled back to that mark. The burned symbol on her shoulder. The same emblem carved into the doorframes of houses left in ashes years ago. He remembered standing among those ruins, the smoke rising in columns, and the stories that came after, the stories about a man who led a band of killers and slavers through the frontier, marking anyone who belonged to him. The woman stirred, waking with a soft gasp. She looked around, disoriented, until her gaze found him. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence was heavy, like the calm before thunder. Finally she whispered, "You shouldn't have helped me." He frowned. "I couldn't leave you out there to die." Her expression darkened. "You don't understand. They'll come." He leaned forward. "Then tell me who they are." Her fingers brushed the edge of the blanket, gripping it tightly. "Men who think they own everything they touch. Raiders. The mark means I belong to them." She looked down, shame flickering across her face. "But I ran. I thought I could make it across the desert. I was wrong." He sat back, jaw tightening. "You're safe now." She shook her head. "No one's safe when they want something back." The rancher stood and crossed to the window. Out beyond the barn, the ground was still wet and the sky beginning to clear. But even as sunlight broke through, a feeling of dread crept over him. Somewhere out there, someone knew she had escaped. Someone was tracking her scent, her trail, every step she had taken through the storm. He turned. "If they're coming, then we'll be ready." Her voice was faint but steady. "You don't even know my name." He smiled sadly. "Doesn't matter. You're on my land now." She looked at him for a long time, searching his eyes for something, maybe disbelief, maybe fear, but found neither. Only quiet resolve. At last, she said, "My name is Tala." "Tala," he repeated. "I'm Grant." The names hung in the air like an oath. By noon, he was outside working the corral, checking the fence lines and the rifle he kept above the barn door. The sun glared off puddles, steam rising from the mud. He had rebuilt that ranch with his own hands after the war, plank by plank, nail by nail. It had been his peace, his solitude, and now it was a fortress. When he returned to the cabin, Tala was standing by the fire, weak but determined. She had washed her face, her hair braided again. For the first time he saw the strength beneath the fear. "You fought before," she said quietly. "I can tell. Long time ago," he said. "Then you know what's coming." He didn't answer, but the silence was enough. That night, they ate what little food he had, beans, bread, and coffee strong enough to burn. She spoke little, only stared into the flames, lost in thought. Every crack of the fire made her flinch. Grant caught himself watching her, wondering what she had endured, what kind of monsters could brand a human being like cattle. When he finally rose to check the door, something made him pause. Through the narrow window, far across the moonlit plain, he saw a faint glimmer. A light, then another. Torches. His stomach tightened. He set his coffee down, reached for his rifle, and blew out the lamp. The room fell into darkness. Tala looked up. "They found me," she whispered. He moved to the window again, counting the lights. 6, no, 8, maybe more. Moving slow, deliberate, toward the ranch. The faint sound of hooves carried through the still air. Grant turned to her. "Can you stand?" She nodded, though her face was pale. "Then stay low," he said, loading the rifle. "If they come here looking for you, they'll find me first." Outside, the torches drew closer. The night filled with the distant rhythm of horses. Grant stepped to the door, breath steady, eyes cold. He had thought his days of war were behind him, but as the firelight flickered over the plain, he felt the old instincts return, the pulse of danger, the weight of a promise he didn't yet understand. Behind him, Tala whispered a prayer. And somewhere out there, the desert wind carried the voices of men who thought they still owned her. The torches moved like a living snake across the open plain, twisting through the mist and brush, their orange glow flickering against the dark. Grant could hear them now, low voices, the soft clank of metal, the snort of horses. He knew that sound too well. Men who weren't in a hurry. Men confident that what they came for was already theirs. He crouched by the window, rifle balanced across the sill. Tala knelt behind him, clutching the edge of the table for balance. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes locked on the glow outside. "How many?" she whispered. "8, maybe 10, he murmured. "Could be more waiting back in the dark." Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady. "They won't stop." He glanced back at her. "They'll have to." For a few moments, silence filled the cabin except for the crackle of the dying fire. Then came a voice from outside, deep, slow, mocking. "We know she's in there, rancher." The words echoed across the cold air. "Step aside and hand her over. You got no reason to die for what's not yours." Grant stayed silent. He shifted his stance, steadying the rifle. The sound of boots crunching in the dirt followed, closer now. Then another voice, "You got till the count of 3. Tala's hand brushed his shoulder. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. He turned just enough to meet her gaze. "Yes, I do." "1," shouted the man outside. Grant took a slow breath, the scent of gun oil thick in his nose. "2," he sighted down the barrel, aiming toward the torchlight flickering between 2 fence posts. "Thr." The shot cracked through the night like thunder. The torch fell, and the shouting began. Horses reared, hooves pounded. Grant chambered another round, his motions sharp and practiced. The next shot shattered the handle of a rifle glinting near the barn. The raiders scattered, diving for cover behind wagons and fence rails. Muzzle flashes flared in the dark. Bullets ripped through the cabin walls, splinters flying. Tala ducked low, pressing herself against the floor. Grant fired again, then rolled aside as a bullet punched through the window frame. Smoke and gunpowder filled the air. The echoes of gunfire stretched across the valley. "Grant," Tala shouted over the noise. "They'll burn us out." He gritted his teeth. "Not before I run 'em dry." Another shout came from outside, "We just want the girl. Step aside and live." Grant's voice cut through the chaos, cold and hard. "She's under my roof. That means she's mine to protect." For a moment, there was silence again. Then a match struck. Grant saw the glow of a torch rise, and the hiss of oil hitting the barn wall. Flames caught. The fire spread fast, licking up the side of the building. The horses screamed. Grant cursed, leaping for the door. He fired a warning shot into the air, scattering 2 men who tried to rush the porch. The flames roared brighter, painting the night in red and gold. Inside, Tala crawled toward the window, clutching something, a small knife, its handle carved from bone. Her eyes flashed with determination. "Grant," she cried, "they won't stop until they see me." He turned, rifle still smoking. "Then stay down." She shook her head. "They'll kill you for me." He stared at her for half a heartbeat, then saw the truth in her eyes, the same fierce courage he'd seen in soldiers long dead. "Not if we end this first," he said. She nodded once. Then, with shaking hands, she reached for the bandage on her shoulder. Before he could stop her, she pulled it aside, exposing the burned symbol beneath. The mark glowed faintly in the firelight, black and twisted, yet strangely beautiful. Grant froze. For the first time, he saw something else beneath the scar, faint lines, like another symbol carved over it, smaller and sharper. "What is that?" he asked. "It's what they fear," she whispered. "The old tribes branded me to hide it. But the mark beneath, that's not theirs. It's a warning." He blinked, not understanding. "A warning of what?" "That their reign ends," she said softly, almost to herself. "That the hunted will rise." Before he could respond, the door shuddered, one of the raiders had kicked it open. Grant swung the rifle up and fired point blank. The man fell hard, crashing into the dirt. Another came through the window, tackled by Tala herself. The blade flashed once, clean and swift. Grant grabbed her arm, pulling her behind him. "We have to move," through the back. The fire outside had spread to the corral now, heat washing over the cabin walls. Smoke stung his eyes. He kicked open the rear door, leading her into the dark beyond the barn. The flames cast their shadows long against the plains. They ran, past the windmill, past the old oak stump, down toward the dry riverbed. Behind them, the raiders shouted, torches bobbing like fireflies. When they reached the edge of the gully, Tala stopped, gasping. "They'll follow." Grant raised his rifle one last time, scanning the ridge. "Then we make sure they don't." The last thing he saw as he turned back toward the ranch was the roof collapsing in flame. Everything he had built, burning. But beside him, Tala stood tall, her hair whipping in the wind, her eyes fixed on the horizon. He knew, in that moment, his life wasn't ending, it was beginning again. The dawn came pale and cold, painting the canyon walls in silver and gold. Grant and Tala had found shelter beneath a rock ledge where a trickle of water ran down from the cliff above. Smoke from the burning ranch still stained the horizon, curling into the morning sky like a funeral veil. Grant sat with his rifle laid across his knees, his eyes fixed on the distance. His coat was torn, hat singed at the brim, and there was a quiet rage in him, a man stripped of everything but the will to fight. Tala sat a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself, her breath misting in the cold. The blood on her shoulder had dried to a dark crust around the strange mark. She hadn't spoken since they'd stopped running. Finally, Grant broke the silence. "You're gonna have to tell me what that thing on your shoulder really means," he said quietly. She looked up, her dark eyes unreadable. "You wouldn't believe me." He met her gaze. "Try me." She drew a slow breath. "When I was a child, my mother was taken by the same men who came last night. They called themselves the Silver Spurs, but they weren't cowboys. They were traders, men who hunted people like me, like her. She was an Apache widow, powerful, proud. But they wanted more than gold or cattle. They wanted something older." Grant frowned. "Older. The mark," she said, touching her shoulder gently. "It's a sign of the old blood. The mark of the sequoia, women said to carry the spirit of the wind. My mother told me it gave her strength, a way to sense danger, to feel what others hide. The white men feared it, so they branded over it, hoping to break the spirit." Grant's jaw tightened. "And those men last night, they were after me because they know what the mark means. If I live, their kind loses power. The land, the cattle, the mines, they've all been stolen from tribes who once guarded this soil. The old mark means their time's ending." He exhaled slowly. "So they want to erase it, erase you." Tala nodded. "They burned villages for it. My mother died protecting me. That's why I ran. That's why I was alone when you found me." Grant rubbed a hand across his jaw, thinking. "You said it's a warning. That their reign ends. How?" She turned toward him, her expression fierce now. "By standing. By fighting back. By finding others like me who still carry the mark. You think the West belongs to men with rifles and gold. It doesn't. It belongs to those who can feel the storm before it comes." Grant gave a low, tired chuckle. "Well, storm or not, I'm all that's left of my ranch. And I've got nothing left to lose." Her eyes softened, a shadow of sadness passing over them. "You lost your home because of me." He looked at her then, really looked. The soot on her cheeks, the streak of dried blood on her collarbone, the defiant light still burning in her eyes. "No," he said quietly. "I lost it because of men who think they can take what they want. You just showed me who they really are." A faint smile touched her lips. "Then what will you do, cowboy?" He leaned back against the rock, eyes narrowing as he scanned the far ridge. "Same thing I've always done. Fight for what's mine. Only now," he looked back at her, "I reckon that includes you." For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the wind whistling through the canyon like a distant song. Then Tala reached out, hesitating, her hand trembling slightly as she touched his wrist. "Grant," she said softly, "you don't understand what this means. If you stay with me, you'll be hunted. You'll be marked too." He didn't move his hand away. "Then let him come. They already took my land. They ain't talkin' my choice." Her lips parted, as if to protest, but no words came. The walls of the canyon caught the sunlight, painting her face in gold. For a moment, neither of them were a cowboy or an outcast. Just two souls the world had pushed too far. A hawk cried overhead, slicing across the sky. Tala looked up, her eyes following it. "She's watching," she murmured. "Who?" he asked. "My mother," she whispered. Grant didn't know what to say. But somehow, he believed her. The day wore on, and they gathered what little they could, water, dry grass, bits of wood. He showed her how to make a fire with flint and steel, and she taught him how to read the wind by the rustle of dry leaves. By dusk, the two of them sat beside a small blaze, eating in silence. The quiet between them wasn't heavy now. It was peaceful, but as the stars came out, Grant caught sight of a faint flicker on the horizon, 3 torches, moving slow. His stomach turned cold. "They found us." Tala stood instantly, eyes blazing with fear and fury. "Then we don't run anymore." Grant rose beside her, loading his rifle. "Damn right we don't." She lifted her chin, her hair wild in the wind. Then tonight, the hunted become the hunters. The flames reflected in both their eyes as the sound of hoofbeats rolled across the night. The wind howled through the canyon like the voice of the dead. The fire they had built was dying, its last embers glowing red beneath the chill of night. Tala stood with her hair whipping around her face, bow in hand, the strange mark on her shoulder faintly glowing under the moonlight. Grant checked the chamber of his rifle one last time and looked at her across the flickering shadows. 3 riders, he said, his voice low. Maybe 4. They're fanning out. Tala closed her eyes for a moment, listening, not with her ears, but something deeper. 4, she said softly. 1 in the ravine, 1 behind the ridge, 2 coming straight at us. The leader's in front, he wears a silver headband. Grant gave a grim smile. Then he's mine. They moved in silence, ghosts among the rocks. The canyon floor was slick with frost, and every step had to be measured, quiet. Tala crouched behind a boulder, drawing her bowstring until it creaked. Grant slid into position across from her, rifle braced against a stone ledge. The torches grew brighter, the hoofbeats closer, echoing off the canyon walls. The first rider appeared, a tall man with a long duster coat and that gleaming silver headband catching the firelight. His face was cruel and hard, the kind of man who thought mercy was for the weak. He raised a torch and sneered. You can come out now, rancher. You're finished. We'll take the girl and what's left of your damn pride. Grant's eyes narrowed. He steadied his rifle, but Tala's voice whispered from the shadows. Wait. The leader turned his head, searching the darkness. That you, squaw, he called mockingly. You'll fetch a fine price this time. Dead or alive. The word squaw sliced through the night like a blade. Tala's hand trembled on the bowstring, her breath sharp. Then, with a sound like the wind snapping a dry branch, her arrow flew. It struck the man square in the chest, and he toppled backward, his torch spinning into the dirt. Grant's rifle cracked an instant later, and another rider fell. The canyon exploded into chaos, gunfire, shouts, the scream of horses rearing in panic. The firelight turned wild across the rocks, flashing on faces twisted in fear. Tala moved like lightning, her arrows striking fast and true. Grant fought like a man possessed, each shot deliberate, each reload calm even as bullets shattered stone near his head. Within minutes, the echoes began to fade. One last rider tried to flee down the ravine, but Tala stepped out from the shadows, bow drawn. Tell your masters, she said coldly, the mark still burns. The man spurred his horse and vanished into the darkness, too terrified to look back. When silence finally fell, Grant lowered his rifle. The air stank of gunpowder and blood. He turned toward Tala, breathing hard. You all right? She nodded, lowering her bow. They won't come again. Not for a while. He looked at her, really looked, at the firelight painting her face, the strength in her stance, the sorrow still lurking behind her eyes. You fought like hell, he said softly. She gave a small, tired smile. So did you. He stepped closer. So what now? You keep running, hidden. She shook her head. No. I find others who carry the mark. The old tribes are scattered, but not gone. If they rise again, this land will remember who it belongs to. He took off his hat, brushing soot from the brim. Then you'll need somewhere to start. Her gaze flicked to him, puzzled. He smiled faintly. I've got no ranch left, but I know how to build one. Got 2 hands, a gun, and more stubbornness than sense. You rebuild, I'll stand guard. She hesitated, studying him as though weighing his soul. You'd stand with me, even after what you've seen. He stepped closer, the distance between them vanishing until the scent of smoke and cedar filled the air. I've seen men fight for gold, for pride, for revenge. But I ain't never seen anyone fight like you did, for something bigger than both of us. The wind carried the last whisper of smoke away, leaving only the stars. Tala reached out slowly and placed her hand on his chest. Then maybe, cowboy, she said softly, you're part of the old blood too. For a moment, neither moved. The world was silent except for the crackle of dying fire and the cry of an owl far away. Then Grant took her hand gently, pressing it against his heart. Guess that means I'm home again. The moon hung high, silvering the canyon walls. The two of them stood there, an Apache woman marked by fate and a rancher reborn from ashes, as dawn began to break. Far below, the cold river whispered over stone. The land was still, as if listening. And somewhere deep within that silence, a legend was born, the story of the cowboy who lost everything, met the spirit of the storm, and found something worth dying for.